Hey climbers, welcome back to Climb by VSC, a weekly show covering how to build and scale startups in the world of climate innovation. My name is Jake Kapoor, general partner of VSC Ventures and co-host of Climb. Every week, I or a member of our VSC team will speak with a pioneer in the climate tech world about emerging technologies and novel ideas that will turn the tide on climate change. We've heard enough of the doom and gloom. It's time for stories about purpose-driven innovation that lead to sustainable, positive change. So have you ever thought about what happens to all those plastic bottles and aluminum cans once you've put them in the recycling bin? Well, today's episode is a perfect listen for you. My partner Vijay Chattha speaks with Areeb Malik, CEO of Glacier, about how they are building robotic automation for the recycling industry. I think you're going to be blown away just by the size and scale of this problem. I am so happy that you've decided to join us. Now let's climb.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Climb, where we interview some of the most important company builders, building companies in climate technology, and really get into the art and science of scaling companies in the space. So today I'm really excited. I met this company at a near future event put on by Zem Joaquin in Southern California. I was blown away with what they're doing. So excited to have Areeb Malik, the co-founder of Glacier, on. And we're going to learn about his mission to use robotics to fight climate change and extract value from the $123 billion recyclable industry that fills our landfills and oceans. Another interesting thing about Areeb is that before co-founding Glacier, he worked as a software engineer at Facebook. And he's going to talk about the complexities of recycling today, why it's an interesting space for robotics, and this massive global waste management market, which is valued at $989 billion, so basically like trillion, and growing 6%. So welcome to the Climb podcast, Areeb. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing pretty well. It's raining like crazy over here, but other than that, it's been a good start to the year, and things are looking very promising for our company as we kind of move into 2023.
Okay, awesome. So first of all, let's start with Glacier. Like, what is Glacier? How does it work? And then how did you start it?
Yeah, so Glacier exists to solve the circular economy, to solve this problem that we as a society have all of this stuff, and we're really good at consuming and producing stuff, but we don't have a solution for what to do with it when we're done. All these plastic bottles and cans and cardboard boxes. Nobody's really thinking about the end of life for this, and it's causing really catastrophic effects for our ecosystem, for our environment. And Glacier is here to work on that problem. And what we do specifically, and I'll dive into the nuances of what recycling is and how it works, but we build robots and AI technology that lives inside of the facilities that handle our recyclables. So where your stuff goes after you put it on the curb, that sorts apart and delivers analytics to improve the operations of these facilities and basically improve the economics of recycling so that we can actually have an economically driven solution to what do we do with all of our stuff. That is what we do. I'll obviously tell you more about all of that because I think recycling is very much a black box to most people out there. But I think, how did it get started? I used to be a software engineer at Facebook. I spent 5 years working there. And it's a great place, right? It's a great place to hone your skills and develop your engineering abilities. But I think a lot of people out there would resonate with this. There's these really obvious big problems that are facing our planet today. For first and foremost of which is climate change. And I did not feel like I was doing my parts. I did not feel like I was using my skills and what I'd been, kind of given in terms of the privilege of being at a big tech company with a lot of smart engineers teaching me how to build great things. I wasn't using that to actually solve the problems that needed solving. And within climate change, within climate tech, there are so many fascinating problems that need solving and so many that are not getting the investments from the minds that can actually solve them that they need. That was my impetus. And so I went looking for the right opportunity within all of climate change and found this really fascinating world of recycling that really could use better technology and better technology solutions to drive it forwards. And that was kind of the impetus that got me there.
Got it. And we'll come back to that sort of leap. But let's get in specifically, how did the actual technology work? From what I recall, there's also a bit of visual technology as well, right, to how it works. But maybe could you just paint a picture for us?
Sure. So let me paint the picture of what a recycling facility is first. So you put your stuff as a consumer out on the curb, a truck, or we call them haulers, comes and take them over to a place called a materials recovery facility, or a MRF. The MRF's job is to sort everything you put in your bin, this jumble of cardboard and other paper and plastic and cans and other stuff that isn't recyclable but you thought was. It's all valueless when it's jumbled together. But if you can actually sort apart the plastic from the paper, etc., you can actually take those commodities and do something with them. And so this job of sorting apart all of this recyclable stuff is really valuable, but very difficult to do. If you go inside any of these facilities today, what you're going to see are a lot of conveyor belts, a lot of chutes, and a lot of people whose job it is to stand above conveyor belts and sort through our trash day in and day out. When I first saw this, it shocked me. I really thought that, we as society had evolved past this and we had, better technology inside these places and people were not powering the back end of this. I think of facilities where we produce cars and computers and phones, and all of these places are fully automated. You don't see a person in there besides technicians managing machines. And then you go into a space like this and you see people, and it just shocked me. And so the idea of what we build is basically robots to help that sorting work. As might not surprise you with a job like sorting trash inside a recycling facility, it's really hard to hire for. It's really hard for these facilities to find people who actually want to do this job. And it's really expensive to pay people because minimum wage isn't even going to cut it for that. And so what we do is we build robots that use computer vision, right? So they look down at a conveyor belt full of trash and recyclables, take a video stream and pass that video stream through an AI model that can determine, okay, that is an aluminum can, that's a plastic bottle, that's cardboard, that's a steel can, whatever. Use that computer vision data, pass it to a robotic system, which can sort apart what needs to be sorted. So we can, using a bunch of robots inside the facilities, create pure streams of just, plastic bottles, cardboard, steel cans, etc.
Got it. And now let's talk about this leap, because I totally agree with you that this is the moment in history when people with advanced technology experience and scaling experience from big tech or startups and venture should be jumping, right? What else could you see happening around us to not convince you, right? So what was that leap like specifically for you? Assume you got this feeling in your heart, you're seeing things, but how do you then make the leap? Especially to waste management. It's not like that's adjacent to social network business. Yeah. What was that step by step? How did you sequence? And then what was that timeline between when you knew you wanted to do it and you actually did it?
Yeah. So my timeline in exact details was, I was at my maybe 4-year mark at Facebook, and I kind of always knew that I wanted to get out and go do something climate related. But at the 4-year mark, I made the decision, okay, this is I'm going to go and do this. So I had now the conviction to make the step. What it was going to be, no idea. And I spent actually 8 months while working at Facebook, using my extra time after hours, finding out what that next step would be. Back in 2018, when I was leaving, I think the world of climate tech companies looked pretty different than it looks today. There were a couple out there. There were a couple of startups out there doing things, but it was very sparse. And if you look into certain problems, right, you go to Project Drawdown, which lists out the top ways that we can actually fight climate change. And you go through those problems, a lot of them did not have big name or even small name companies working on them. Versus today, I think if you do that, you'll start to find basically most areas in climate tech, there are small companies, even medium-sized companies, working on those problems. So for me, I was looking around. I couldn't really find too many cool companies to join. And from my perspective, it made a lot more sense from a macro lens to bring impact by creating a company, by creating a venture inside a space that was underinvested in, and pursuing that instead of joining onto a company that was there. Because again, the percentage of spaces that had investments was just too low. And so I thought the best way to go forward at this point is to found a company that will bring more people into this space. So knowing that, I decided to look, okay, what are the problems I actually want to solve? And from here, I kind of had this checklist of 3 items. So number 1 was the climate impact. Obviously, I wanted to find a business model that's directly aligned with climate impact. And that's actually not necessarily so straightforward. I think a lot of companies do a lot of good things, but their business models don't actually tie. So I think of Patagonia as a great example of this. They do awesome things for the climate, but if somebody took over Patagonia and just wanted to make money, it would just turn into gap, right? There's nothing binding the business model to the climate impact. So I wanted to find something where as the business made more money, we generated more climate impact. That was number one. Number two is I wanted to find something that was AI based. I kind of viewed from a technological standpoint, AI is hitting this turning point where it's becoming more accessible to the generalist software engineer. And what that meant was you're going to start to see new technologies appearing inside industries that otherwise wouldn't be invested in by companies like Google and Facebook. They're powered by AI. And so I wanted to be part of that wave. And number three was I wanted to go find a solution that didn't need to be sold. I wanted to go find a group of people who needed a problem solved. The solution just didn't exist yet. And so I used that to look everywhere. I looked into electrification, grid electricity delivery, desalinization, all these spots, all the while finding one or another reason it wasn't the right move for me. And then I stumbled into recycling just on a whim as a place to investigate, and very quickly found that it was exactly what I was looking for. It had this very obvious climate bind to the business model. The better recycling does, the better our sustainability as a society is. Straightforward. The AI piece was pretty obvious as well because AI was just getting good enough to have vision, distinguish a can from a bottle in real time at high speed. And then the need was so obvious. You go talk to any of these facilities, they all desperately want better technology, and robotics are exactly what they are looking for. So found that. That was, again, 6 or 7 months after starting my quest and talking to, experts in various industries. Found it. It seemed like the right thing. And then a month later, I quit and started on it.
What was the path on how you wanted to decide who you want to start this with? What was the fundraising path like?
Yeah. Great question. So started off just as an idea, right? It was just my idea. I always knew I wanted to co-found with somebody. Just hearing anecdotally, first time founding a company without a co-founder is really difficult, just because it's such an intense journey, and it's really beneficial to just have a partner there along the ride. So I always knew I wanted to find a co-founder, and I wanted to find someone who was kind of complementary to me on my skill sets. I was kind of a generalist software engineer, but I also have pretty strong PM type skills, and so I could have gone either way and find a strong technical co-founder or a strong business co-founder. And so spent that time looking. I think my earliest days was develop a prototype, develop proof that this product would actually solve the problem and get sold. Right? I didn't want to spend 2 years building a big industrial robot and then find out at the tail end that nobody wants this thing. And so a lot of my earliest days were just going and talking to facilities. That was cold calling them, digging them up on Google Maps and find a number and calling and just trying to find a way through their phone system to talk to the person who runs the MRF and have a conversation with them. I was going to facilities, right? There are a handful of them around wherever you are in the country. You can find your local MRF, and they generally are, open to chatting with people because they think it's a good public initiative to educate. And so going to those facilities, talking to them, whatever it might have been, having those conversations, learning what their pain points were, right? What is it about your sorting process today that is painful? What do you wish would change? What do you see the future as? And understanding what it is that they would pay for, what it is that they would want to see in their kind of facilities, and pitch them. Say, okay, well, look, this is what I'm trying to build. I'm thinking about building a robotic sorter that does X, Y, and Z. It would sit here and do this. What do you think? And I think my earliest 3 months at the company, I kept hearing the same really strong validation that if you build this robot you're talking about, I would absolutely buy it. I absolutely need something like that because I cannot see what I'm doing today as a sustainable future for this industry. I got that feedback over and over and over again. And that was kind of the big start of things in terms of how I started the company, developed confidence that this was worth doing and it was worth investing my time into. My co-founder, I stumbled into as a friend of a friend. She was also looking to get into waste specifically, had a very similar story to me, except on the business side. She did time at Bain and Company. She did time at Thumbtack as a product lead, and was looking to get into climate. Kind of the same story I gave, except different angle. And then we stumbled into each other because of a friend, mutual connection, and got started there. And it's been an awesome fit because I think that complementary skill sets, but mission alignment, very critically, we both have the same kind of decision matrix for how to make hard decisions relative to the mission. That's been great to have. And I think you asked about fundraising as well.
Yeah.
So the first chunk of time, I mean, you start a company, you basically just don't pay yourself, right? Most of your funding is by your salary is zero, so you have almost no burn rate, which is great, and that gets you some way. But after a certain bit of time, and especially with something like build an industrial robots, you need people, you need engineers, you need staff to actually make that happen. That's when you actually need funding. So we started off with a friends and family round to get a little bit of gas in the engine. We moved to a pre-seed round pretty shortly thereafter. That was pretty easy to get people on board with, because I think our mission really resonates. The opportunity is really obvious. And so it was relatively easy to get people inspired by the idea, inspired by what we were intending to work towards and the problem we were working to solve. And a lot of angel investors were really eager to help us out with that. And then from there, you build more progress in the company, get the right people on, stay as lean as possible. I think as long as you can show progress with a lean budget, I think that's really enticing for future investors as you grow.
Got it. And then in that process, right? So how much have you raised so far? How many rounds are you in now?
We raised like I said, the friends and family, the pre-seed and the seed. And we raised and we're going out for our Series A right about now. So in total, we have raised just over 5 million to date. And that's gotten us to be a team of about 15 people. And now we're looking to really, expand on that and kind of explode our commercial progress, because we have, I think at this point, demonstrated the technical traction we needed to. And so now it's really about switching gears from technical development to commercial development.
Got it. Now, let's talk about the venture climate right now. So it seems like there's two things happening at once. There's tremendous recalculation of valuations, but there's also like a influx of venture capital in the climate.
Yeah.
And there's a acceleration of climate issues in the world, right? In awareness and intent and government, like programs like IRA. So like, where do you feel that all balancing out for you right now?
It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? I think since we started the company, the focus on climate has been growing, and that's been really beneficial to our ability to fundraise, because there's just so much money that wants to get into climate tech startups. So that's been great, and I think it's been very easy, like I said, to get people intrigued by the idea. On the flip side, like the valuations are coming down. You just need to, as a robotics company specifically, you need to prove out a lot more with each step you take than you had to 2 years ago, right? And so over the last, year or so, the amount of work required to raise a Series A, the distance you have to make from foundation, has just grown. And so it's fine. Like it's just a matter of like when we raise, not if we raise. But it's definitely been a shift in what we were expecting, right? You're seeing valuations drop and expectations go up, which is expected in the market. And so as a company, right, you just have to make sure that you have the ability to get to that certain, expectation that is being held of you with enough runway. And fortunately, that's something that we're very capable of doing, but it definitely just requires you to, be nimble on your toes and be ready to adjust because, a year ago, we couldn't have seen this coming.
Yeah. And then like these MRFs, right?
Yeah.
Is this an industry that's recession proof? I'm just saying from the buyer side, we make trash all the time, right? We're making trash in any economy. I know in some ways part of healthcare is recession proof. You could argue some part of gaming has been actually, sometimes it goes up. Where does waste management fit in terms of recessions?
Very recession proof. It's pretty much agnostic to recessions because you as a consumer, you consume about as much during a recession either way, right? Consumption is a factor of population, not so much a factor of economic prosperity. And so you see just as much waste. If you look at the numbers on the back end, you couldn't even tell there was a recession because it doesn't really matter, right? And so in terms of volumes handled, throughput of facilities, they are recession proof. The one challenge, of course, is the labor, because labor is just tough to kind of be a facility that's powered by labor. And so that's where they're kind of feeling the hit on the recession, especially because a lot of people are just, not getting into like these kind of jobs anymore That's becoming a little more stark in the last couple of years. But in terms of the economics of recycling, yeah, it's not going to be affected by this because, as you mentioned, people are always consuming. In the same way healthcare is recession-proof because people are always getting sick and needing help.
So there's really a labor supply issue then in this space.
Absolutely, yeah. That's been the biggest driver of adoption of our technology is the fact that not only is this technology better, but frankly, like you as a facility just don't have the people you need to run your facility because you just can't hire them. One of the big players in the space, they report that 40% of their workers quits on day one.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's just that messy of a job. It is one of the most dangerous jobs in all of industry because you're sticking your limbs into moving streams of you don't know what. And so the injury rate is really high. It's really hard to hire people for. And so, yeah, it's really tough to find people who do this job and who stick around. And if you can incentivize them, you have to incentivize them with a hefty cash sum over minimum wage. And so, yeah, labor is a very much an issue in the space.
Got it. So is there any insights about the recycling industry that would shock non-industry participants?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you look at it, right? I think a lot of people look at recycling and they say this thing doesn't work, right? If you've been following the recycling news, you're seeing stories of, your recyclables are being dumped into the same bin, the same truck as your landfill. And you're seeing stories of your recyclables are just being sent to landfill because nobody's buying it. And that is all unfortunately true. But I think the reality is that it's a necessary system we need to fix, right? There is no other solution to what do we do with all of our stuff than recycling, right? You can landfill it. That's good. That's bad. You can burn it. That's terrible. You can ship it off to some other country for them to landfill it. Also bad, right? So if you're going to have this consumption pattern, the reality is you need recycling to work. So the good news, and maybe the other like shocking thing is like, yes, recycling absolutely can work. It just hasn't been invested in. It just in the last 30, 40 years since it's been around, hasn't received the attention it needs. And we're kind of seeing that pain point in these stories, right? Your recyclables are being sent to landfill. Nobody's buying it. It's because it's been underinvested in. If we can give it the proper attention, we can actually turn it into a space that delivers joy and people feel good about recycling instead of where they might be today.
Yep, got it. And that what is like, so this is again, learning for founders. You're selling to MRFs, right? Are they government or is that government? Is it funded by the government? What's the customer profile like?
Yeah, so most of them are actually private companies, which is great for our ability to sell. They are oftentimes in contractual obligation with the government in terms of what type of tonnage they process, et cetera. But the people we actually sell to are private customers, which makes it somewhat easier for us to work in there. There are a couple that are municipal, and when you're working with a municipal, buyers, just be ready to expect longer lead time on purchase because it just takes long. There's a lot more process you have to push through, and everything just kind of moves more slowly, which is tricky for a startup who wants to develop a swath of early customers really fast to say look, people love this thing. If you're relying on municipalities to do that, you have to be ready for a very long lead time for your first customer, and your first customer needs to be really big. But I will say we have a couple of customers who are municipal. And when you get in there, it's great because once you're in with a municipality, you're really in it. So it's pros and cons, but I think as a start, you have to be ready for that long lead time to the sale.
What is a lead time like that for a municipal?
It depends. It depends on what we're selling. But in this industry, probably something like 6 to 9 months from first contact to actually convincing them to buy a thing.
Yep. Okay. Got it. I guess another question about this is in this process from leaving Facebook to where you are now, right?
Yeah.
What, looking back or with telling another founder, this is one thing I got right about how I scale this thing. And this is one thing I got wrong, and just learn from me. Don't make my mistake. What would those be?
The one thing I got right was making sure I found the product market fit before I built the product. I did a ton of research. My co-founder and I both did a ton of research before we'd ever really built a full-scale prototype with all of the people we'd be selling to. It's an industry that is eager for people to come in and disrupt and add new technology. And so getting their buy-in and getting their intent on purchasing was easy enough and super valuable. And so when we actually, several years later started being able to produce this thing, we had the demand there for us. People already want our stuff, and we haven't even proven ourselves as a company. What I got wrong was hiring. I really, really wish we had hired more people sooner. It takes so much, especially in hardware, especially in robotics. It takes so much to build this thing, so much more than I'm used to at Facebook, where everything's software and I have, billions of dollars of infrastructure underneath my feet to build on top of. I really wish I had hired more people sooner, because the impact is there. And every minute, every day we're not actually scaling our company is just wasted time, where the environmental impact is getting worse and we're unable to actually change this industry sooner.
Yep. Makes sense. And then in terms of like how this scales, is this a regional scale that you have approached? Is it a national? Is it international? Like how, as at the seed stage also, right? Like it's you have this finite resources. What's the best strategy for a business like yours?
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with hardware, right, when you need to actually go and install the thing and service the thing, it definitely pays to have that stuff close to home, right? If you're dealing with a prototype that you are developing, if you're dealing with beta machines that are going to be breaking and you're going to need to repair and add updates to, having to fly across the country for each little visit is definitely painful. And so keeping sales close to home in the beginning was definitely an intentional choice in terms of our expansion strategy. As we grow and our machines get more stable, then we have the ability to send these things to corners of the country. And as our commercial progress gets more stable, then we have the ability to start expanding to international geos. And so that's kind of maybe a somewhat expected progress chart we're following, is start regional, then go domestic. Once our domestic is good, we can start talking international.
Got it. And then is there any like political differences in states around recycling? Like, is it become political? Is it more, hey, everybody gets recycling is now a mainstream thing?
Another one of the great things about it is it's super non-political. People who are in the industry, I have met my fair share of liberals and conservatives running these facilities, because for them, they're just trying to make a buck, right? They have all of this waste and they're just trying to turn it into something they can sell. And it's just this financial thing. And so the politics are fortunately not imbued in this space. People who we sell to, political leanings all over the place, they're mostly interested in the business economics of what we're selling. And so that is, it's kind of nice. It's like one of those few spaces where even if you're a climate denier, you're like, yeah, I could see the benefit of, better recycling. It's a good money maker, and like, it makes more sense to turn it into stuff and put it in the landfill. Cool. So it's fortunately very apolitical, and that's definitely a benefit to us in terms of our selling, as well as getting investments.
Awesome. Great. And then just thinking again, back to like kind of going back and forth between the business and the entrepreneurial journey, at where you are now, like what was sort of the best advice given to you in terms of being an entrepreneur?
I think best advice I received is how important it is to lean on your network, lean on your community for growing in those early days. I was a web developer. I built APIs and UIs, and then I jumped out and I built a full-scale industrial robot. There's no way I'm doing that without finding the right people and really just humbly getting their advice. I think that was the advice I was given, is like, lean on your community, find the people who know better, and just go ask them how they would do it, and then do it for them. I did that maybe 10 or 20 times in the first year or two of the business, solving all sorts of technical challenges that I had no experience with, and that got me really far.
How much value is there in being a second-time robotics entrepreneur, or first time? Like, is there a lot of things you're like, man, now I know that to make these decisions or scale is so much easier? Or is it very specific to the robot you're building?
I built this code base on my own before hiring my first software engineer a year and a half after starting the company. And all of these little decisions I made, right? I was like, oh, this seems like a reasonable choice. They have like these big, overwhelming effects, right? I have this one engineer who's like rewriting this one kind of Cartesian architecture I just devised. And it like made sense at the time, but like it's totally a mess now. And these like everything you do, you have to get really perfect. In order for the future engineers to not have to deal with your consequences. And so having the experience, I think in robotics certainly would have been somewhat beneficial. I will say that I think I did a relatively good job of it myself, because I did, again, have that Facebook experience to say, this is how Facebook would build this thing, I'm going to do that. And that has turned out to have scaled reasonably well, although I will say I'm very thankful for my engineers for cleaning up many of the messes I made.
Awesome. And as you're growing now, right? What does the evolution of the team look like now? So, you've gotten to this point, you have 15 people. Is it you want people that have more like sort of robotics experience, people that have already done something in waste management? Like, is it still more of like raw intelligence over domain expertise? Like, I'm just curious how you think about your needs now.
Yeah, I think coming into the waste industry as this Silicon Valley company, we present this lens of being able to innovate in a way that's unencumbered by previous experience, right? So we get to come at this problem from a really innovative and novel lens. I think that shows in the design and the approach we've taken. It is something that nobody's really ever seen in this space before. And once you get that set up, you have the innovative lens. From there, it kind of switches over to execution. It's important to have that domain expertise, right? It's important to have people who understand how the industry works, how robotics work, to scale, right? Some of the questions we haven't solved yet are like, how do you have 100 machines out there and maintain all of them at once, right? That's something where somebody with that experience is really valuable versus at the beginning of the company, it wasn't really necessary to have that. What you really wanted was generalist, critical, creative thinkers, and the domain expertise didn't really matter.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And how about the sort of the labor market now with sort of the market shift? Are you finding it easier to attract talent?
For sure. Yeah,
any jobs that are still hard or just to find? Kind of like, how's that?
There are a lot of people, fortunately, who are trying to get into climate tech. There's a lot of cool kind of channels for helping people find them. Those channels are growing month over month. And so that's awesome to see. There's a lot of people who are just intrigued by what we're building because it is a climate tech company. We also do robotics and AI. It's kind of this awesome trifecta for engineers and technicians who want to work on, something in the space. On the flip side, when you're building what we are building, there are a lot of very specific needs. People like electrical engineers who have industrial experience that you're already carving a very small target with that need. If I was just looking for like software engineers who know how to build UIs and APIs and databases, I think I would have plenty of options to pick from. But when you're building something like this, which in climate, by the way, unfortunately, like most things need hardware, right? You need electrical, you need to move electrons and atoms and all this stuff. You tend to need candidate profiles that there are just not many of. But I think that's starting to shift as well. Because I think people are seeing the need for these expertises as our society focuses more on climates.
Yep, makes sense. Well, Areeb, this is awesome. Last question here. What's the one thing that maybe bothers you or you see out there that you want more of the world to be thinking about or shifting their perception on?
I mean, look, I left Facebook to work on this, and I'm definitely part of the problem because I spent 5 years working on it at Facebook. But there are just too many people today who are working on these things that just don't matter relative to how important climate change is. And I desperately want everybody to quit their jobs and start working on climate today because we're running out of time and we really could use the help.
That's phenomenal, Areeb. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed having you on today. For everyone listening, go check out Glacier. Check out what Areeb's building. It's incredible. And we wish you all the best in the journey moving forward. And thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I love what you guys are working on.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of Climb by VSC. Thank you so much for watching and listening. A few quick shout outs before you go. Our thanks to Areeb Malik for sharing his journey with Glacier with us. Special thanks also to Credo for their help in producing and promoting this episode. To visit any part of today's conversation again, you can find the full transcript on vscventures.com. Our thanks to Josue Ramiro for posting those every week. Lastly, if you've listened this far, please leave us a rating on Spotify or a review on iTunes. It only takes a few seconds, really helps us out, and as far as I know, it's still carbon neutral. Well, that's it for now. We'll see you all next week on Climb by VSC.